Now that you understand the basic concepts of blood pressure, let's discuss how the human body regulates blood pressure. Understanding this will help you better understand the mechanisms of action and potential side effects of medications used to treat hypertension. The human body regulates blood pressure primarily through the combined actions of the nervous system and the kidneys, though the heart and blood vessels also play a role. Humans have an automatic blood pressure regulation mechanism. For example, in ancient times, people faced various dangers everywhere, such as hunting to survive, which often involved encountering dangerous animals. When faced with such dangers, the human body would immediately trigger a stress response, either to fight or flee. Stress refers to the physiological and psychological responses that occur when the body is exposed to external threats, stimuli, or challenges. During stress, blood pressure rises sharply, increasing blood flow to the brain and muscles to provide sufficient oxygen and glucose, enabling the brain to quickly analyze the danger and make decisions. Simultaneously, muscles receive increased oxygen and nutrient supply, allowing the body to escape or fight more effectively. Although modern humans do not face the same dangers as our ancient ancestors, we often encounter various emergencies in daily life. When humans encounter emergencies, blood pressure suddenly rises, which is a natural physiological response and regulatory mechanism of the human body. The body also has compensatory mechanisms, such as fight or flight. Once the danger or emergency has passed, blood pressure naturally decreases. Now, let's take a look at how the human body regulates blood pressure. As I mentioned earlier, blood pressure is primarily regulated by the nervous system and the kidneys working together. Here, I will first discuss the nervous system. The human body is covered with nerves, which together form the nervous system. Nerves are responsible for transmitting and processing neural electrical signals. Our vision, hearing, pain, and touch are all forms of neural electrical signals. You can imagine these nerve signals as electricity in real life. Electricity is transmitted through wires, and similarly, signals in the human body are transmitted and processed through nerves. Here, I will briefly introduce some terms related to nerves: neurons, nerve cells, nerve fibers, and the concepts and differences between nerves. This will make it easier for you to understand the process of blood pressure regulation in the human body later on. Nerves are composed of neurons, which are nerve cells. Neurons are the basic structural and functional units of the nervous system. The diagram below shows a neuron. A neuron consists of a cell body and projections. This is the cell body, with the neuron's nucleus at its center. The cell body is surrounded by dendrites, which receive information from other neurons. The long projection is called the axon, which functions like a cable to transmit information at high speeds. The end of the axon is the axon terminal, whose primary function is to transmit neural signals to the next cell. This is a neuron. What is a nerve fiber? A fiber is a thin, long structure resembling a thread, and this long segment is a nerve fiber. A nerve fiber consists of an axon and a myelin sheath surrounding the axon. The myelin sheath is an insulating layer that protects the nerve and significantly enhances signal transmission speed. Multiple nerve fibers form nerve bundles, which are bundled together to form a nerve. This nerve is similar to the electrical wires in our daily lives. Inside the wires are very thin conductors surrounded by insulation and protective layers. Just as wires come in different thicknesses, nerves also vary in thickness. For example, the sciatic nerve is relatively thick, while some sympathetic and parasympathetic nerves are relatively thin. Alright, the above is an overview of the concepts and differences between neurons, nerve cells, nerve fibers, and nerves. Next, I will introduce the structural composition and classification of the nervous system. The nervous system is divided into the central nervous system and the peripheral nervous system. The central nervous system consists of the brain and spinal cord. It serves as the command center of the nervous system, responsible for receiving, integrating, and processing signals from both external and internal sources. The peripheral nervous system comprises all nerves located outside the brain and spinal cord. It transmits signals from the central nervous system to various parts of the body or vice versa, conveying signals from the body's nerves back to the central nervous system. You can imagine the central nervous system as a highway, which serves as a transportation hub, while the surrounding roads and paths are the peripheral nervous system. The peripheral nervous system can be further divided into the somatic nervous system and the autonomic nervous system. The somatic nervous system is responsible for controlling skeletal muscle movement and perceiving external environmental stimuli. Is under conscious control. For example, you can actively control the movement of skeletal muscles, such as lifting weights, walking, or running, all of which can be controlled by your conscious mind. For example, if you want to lift a bucket of water, you have the intention, and the motor cortex in the brain sends neural signals. These signals are transmitted through the motor neurons in the spinal cord to the muscles in the arms and body. When muscle cells receive the neural signals, they contract, thereby completing the action of lifting the water. This process is entirely dependent on your subjective consciousness and is an autonomously controlled action. This action is controlled by the somatic nervous system. The autonomic nervous system, on the other hand, controls internal organs, smooth muscles, glands, respiration, digestion, and other organs. These organs are not under conscious control. For example, you cannot consciously control the speed at which your heart beats. Similarly, digestion, respiration, and other bodily functions are beyond conscious control and are automatically regulated by the body. Let me give you a concrete example: breathing. Many people might think they can control their breathing consciously, such as holding their breath. However, this is merely a deliberate effort. When you hold your breath, the carbon dioxide concentration in your body rises to a certain level, and your brain will forcefully trigger the breathing reflex. This is something you cannot resist with your willpower. Humans cannot suffocate themselves to death. Unless you are drowning, but drowning is not caused by holding your breath. It is caused by inhaling water, which leads to suffocation. This is caused by external environmental factors. It is important to understand that human control over the body is divided into conscious and unconscious control. Conscious control refers to behaviors that we can perceive, choose, and actively regulate. These reactions are processed at a relatively slower speed. Unconscious control, on the other hand, refers to instinctive reactions that we cannot perceive or actively control, and these reactions are processed very quickly. Alright, then the autonomic nervous system can be further divided into the sympathetic nervous system and the parasympathetic nervous system. We often hear the terms sympathetic nervous system and parasympathetic nervous system in everyday life. The sympathetic nervous system is responsible for emergency situations such as fighting or fleeing. It can accelerate the heart rate, increase blood pressure, and increase breathing frequency. The parasympathetic nervous system does the opposite. It is mainly responsible for recovery and relaxation. It can slow down the heart rate, lower blood pressure, and slow down the breathing rate. Our sleep is regulated by the parasympathetic nervous system. Now that we understand some of the basics of the nervous system, let's take a look at how the nervous system regulates blood pressure. The nervous system regulates blood pressure mainly through the sympathetic and parasympathetic nervous systems. For example, when a person is in danger or in an emergency.
Deva, break!
Please slow down!
When a person sees, hears, or feels danger, the amygdala in the brain quickly identifies it as dangerous. The amygdala then activates the hypothalamus, which stimulates the sympathetic nervous system. The sympathetic nervous system immediately sends emergency signals to various organs throughout the body. Simultaneously, the sympathetic nervous system stimulates the adrenal glands to release adrenaline and noradrenaline. These hormones stimulate the heart to beat faster and contract more forcefully. At the same time, these hormones also stimulate blood vessels to constrict, causing blood pressure to rise rapidly. Next, I would like to focus on the kidneys. The kidneys are urinary organs, and many people think that they are only related to urination. In addition to being related to urination, the kidneys are also important organs that regulate blood pressure. Let's take a look at how the kidneys regulate blood pressure in the human body. There is a large molecule called angiotensinogen in the blood vessels. When our blood pressure is low, or we encounter an emergency, the kidneys release renin into the bloodstream. Renin breaks down angiotensinogen into multiple fragments, one of which is angiotensin 1. Angiotensin 1 itself has little activity, but under the action of angiotensin-converting enzyme, is cleaved into a fragment called angiotensin 2. This angiotensin 2 is highly active and can cause blood vessels to constrict, thereby increasing blood pressure. At the same time, angiotensin 2 stimulates the adrenal glands to release aldosterone and the pituitary gland to secrete antidiuretic hormone. Aldosterone, a hormone, causes the kidneys to retain sodium and excrete potassium. Our table salt contains a large amount of sodium ions, which have a water-retaining property. If the sodium concentration in the blood is high, it will attract water into the blood vessels, increasing blood volume and thereby raising blood pressure. Here, there is a term called blood volume, which refers to the total amount of blood circulating in the human body. You can imagine it as the amount of water in a pipe. For example, when we receive intravenous fluids in a hospital, it is a way to increase blood volume because intravenous fluids are directly injected into the blood vessels, thereby increasing the total amount of fluid in the vascular system. An increase in blood volume leads to an increase in blood pressure. Additionally, the pituitary gland secretes antidiuretic hormone, ADH. The function of ADH is to reduce urine output. Since urine is primarily composed of water, reduced urine output leads to more water remaining in the blood vessels, thereby increasing blood volume. An increase in blood volume results in elevated blood pressure. Here, I will repeat that when the adrenal glands secrete aldosterone, it causes sodium retention, leading to salt retention. Salt retention refers to the abnormal accumulation of sodium in the body, primarily from dietary salt, which is not excreted normally and instead accumulates in the body. Salt retention increases blood volume, which in turn raises blood pressure. The above are the primary mechanisms by which the human body regulates blood pressure, involving the nervous system, kidneys, hormones, and other mechanisms working together to maintain blood pressure. When blood pressure rises to a certain level, the body activates corresponding compensatory mechanisms to prevent further increases. In other words, blood pressure does not rise indefinitely. The body has its own system to regulate blood pressure downward, helping to gradually restore it to a relatively balanced state.